Hello and welcome to Banking Frontiers Live. In our quest for bringing together some wonderful conversations in front of you, this time around we are going to host a very interesting conversation around security sentinels. The cybersecurity sector is typically in a great demand as always. And if you see, the CERT in India alone has witnessed about 1.39 million cases in 2024 alone. To top it all, 33% has been the rise in the amount of cybersecurity cases in the insurance sector. What does all this mean? There has been constantly shifting goalposts. With AI coming into picture, with quantum computing now making its inroads into the banking and financial sector, and along with that, the business and the technology strategy has been constantly evolving. In today's conversation, we are going to introduce to you a combination of a CIO and a CISO from a very promising company called as x-Biz Techventures. Mr. Dipak Nair, who is the founder and managing director of x-Biz Techventures, has also been the former CIO of Tata AIG, and he has been a decorated CIO who has really been evolving some wonderful strategies around business and technology and cybersecurity. Along with Deepak, we have got Mr. Sunil Yadav, who is again a specialist in fraud investigation, cybersecurity, and he is the co-founder and director of Secure Nexus, which is again a part of x-Biz Tech Ventures. Sunil has been doing a lot of interesting investigations into the area of threats and cyber attacks in the financial services domain and otherwise. And let us learn a lot more from him about some of the recent threats. Let me welcome Mr. Deepak into this conversation. Deepak Nair, welcome to this conversation.
Hi,
Thank you.
Babu. It's always a pleasure interacting with you.
Today, gentlemen, we will start off with a very basic landscape mapping of how the security and threat landscape is mapping in the immediate future and in the medium and longer term in the wake of all the technology revolutions that are taking place. What is your thought, Deepak?
So one thing I can say, Babu, is that we are in a race, right? Almost every organization that you interact with, that we interact with, we are in a race to digitalize, and we are in a race to automate, and we are in a race to bring in autonomous capabilities with all the AI that is coming in, right? So whether it is AI, quantum computing, generative AI, uh, businesses are looking at moving to the digital more and more. And we are on a daily basis creating assets. Someone needs to protect these assets because there is somebody out there who is trying to breach in and compromise those assets. So just like the government, and we see the central government or the federal government, the budget that it allocates, there is a budget for development, but there is a significant budget even for the defense, right? You can create a great bridge or an infrastructure, but you need to also protect it. The same thing applies to the corporate sector. We are creating assets on a daily basis. So how are we going to protect them is a big question mark, right? Looking at the same level of technology which is getting used to build, the same tools are available to break as well. It only depends on whose hands the technology is lying with, right? The protector or the perpetrator. And that makes our task a little bit more difficult. Okay. And there lies an opportunity also. With every difficulty, lies an opportunity as well. And that is what we can discuss today, right? We have got Sunil, who can bring in that aspect of AI in cybersecurity, new technologies in cybersecurity. While as CIOs, we keep creating, assets and problems for them to protect, right? I think that's what I want to bring into play.
Let's hand over the relay race to Sunil to take up from the CISO's perspective.
Yeah. So, well, Deepak, you rightly mentioned, like, as a CIO, your job is to, build unique applications, bring in more tech, to always get a go-to market advantage, right? You want to always want to stay ahead in terms of technology, right? So that's a dream of every CIO. And on the other hand, I always keep on saying this: complexity is the enemy of a secure software, right? And that applies to the organization also, right? So while in a rush to implement so many techs like AI, analytical platforms, right, and maybe a cloud migrations, while all of these makes the IT more effective, efficient, but even a subtle mistake can take you out of the business. And there are so many stories around it. The way the AI is evolving, organizations are utilizing AI, but at the same time, hackers are even, equipped with these AI tools, and they have automated in such a way that even if you make a subtle mistake, they'll grab that opportunity and will put you into the news. Right? And so many breaches have happened just because there's a complexity in the app. There's an API being created, and those are like shadow APIs. No one knows about them. They're lying there, and attacker takes an advantage because they have their own sweet time, right? So if they are behind one organization, they can spend like a month, 6 months just to find one loophole, that can help them extract data and then put them into the dark web, and you know the story after that, right?
We are
Cut them.
talking about the kind of differences that
Okay.
has happened in the recent attacks compared to the attacks that have happened in the earlier times.
In terms of attack, so earlier was very, I mean, as people were not security conscious, products were like coming up with the default, set of security. But over the period of time, they have become more security conscious. Framework, security tools, they all ship with default security in place, which is slightly improved, better version like default by deny by default. But today, if you see, the trend has changed. There's attack happening, like a simple attack, I would say, the data getting exposed on the dark web, attacker utilizing the credentials from dark web, and logging into organizations applications and stealing data from there, right? And in my last 3 or 4 investigations I did, the trend was similar. At one of the places, the vendor's credential was leaked out. From the vendor, the attacker actually got into the organization and actually got access to the AWS environment, and they stole a lot of data from the AWS storage, right? So that was one of the trends. Second was related to the API. So there was an API that was exposed without authentication, and there was no monitoring in place. And attacker found out the endpoint, and he exfiltrated the whole set of data from there, right? And both the organization were in the news, and it was a massive data breach.
But with agentic AI happening and automation of attacks happening today in the surface, on the other hand, organizations are also looking at agentic AI or automation of security. So, how is this trend catching up? Because that automation automatically does not need a separate hacker to keep putting in, injecting in the trojans or whatever into the ecosystem on a regular basis. So how does things work? How do organizations defend themselves then?
Still, there is a big gap. Okay, there are certain myths which are running within some of the professionals. Like, for example, I've heard people saying that I am with a large cloud provider, so by default, security comes with it, right? It's a myth because the cloud provider does provide perimeter security, but the application security, the cloud configuration, the what has gone into the software from a supply chain attack perspective, all of that is the responsibility of the technology function to do. A lot of organizations were flying under the radar in the past. And when I say flying under the radar, what do I mean? See, as a hacker, you also have limited capacity, had limited capacity and time and energy, right? So we prioritize. What will give me a better result is where I will put my energy into. But with AI and quantum computing, with automation of breaches, they can run 24/7. Even the attacker can put up agents to go through and figure out who is vulnerable and then get those low-hanging fruits. Earlier, these were not looked at because maybe his perception of that company was not great, right? Or was not a preferred target. But when you get a easy low-hanging fruit, then he has a motive to earn a quick buck. So even the organizations which were flying under the radar are now coming up and getting attacked. That means cybersecurity is required by almost everyone.
All the levels.
Because the attack frequency and the ability has increased multifold, right? Which means the protectors also need to step up and companies need to also spend on protection of those, of those assets that they have created. Still, budgets and resources are a constraint. Because not everybody can afford, the top level security. Let's understand. Like, you have a top bank which can afford millions of dollars worth of security measures. At the same time, a very small bank or a payment bank or a startup who's just come in, they won't. I mean, their revenue will be lesser than the security spend of a top bank, but the threat is the same.
Correct.
They also have customer data. They also have the money that they are dealing with, which they can lose, right? So how much to invest and in what to invest is a big question mark. And that is where the challenge of cybersecurity professionals, goes high, and new innovative ways of protecting and parking needs to be brought in from a business standpoint, right?
Super.
When I say protect and park, what do I mean by that? Protect is actually putting the tools and the personnel to protect your assets. And park is to get cyber insurance, the right cyber insurance at the right price, covering the right coverages or the risks, and not get lost in the fine print when the real moment of truth comes.
Interesting. So what you protect it. What you know, you don't know. Or what you don't know, you don't know. You do cyber insurance for that.
Right. And in that brings a very interesting nuance of what you don't know is to try and find out what you don't know.
Correct.
Right. What do I mean by that is there are tools, like for example, Sunil's team, Secure Nexus, provides the ASM tool, which does auto discovery, right? To remove or reduce your blind spot. I mean, we have cases where top financial institutions have got surprised by the results. One company thought that they had X amount of domains and subdomains. When we ran the report, we found out 10x. The X to 10x was the number of domains and subdomains which were there. And right now they are running a project to reduce this, to find out what those were and reduce it. And how did this come up is the big question mark. Right? And what we found out was companies which have been there for long have gone through multiple system migrations. When you undergo multiple system migration, there's always that period of parallel run. And then the period of old system being kept alive for some time, and then it gets forgotten. But the doors and windows will keep, remain open in a way.
Okay.
Right? So that kind of a tech debt is one big culprit that we saw. Another culprit that we saw was the shadow IT. See, today is a world of SaaS. Anybody can go and subscribe to any service and start using it. So user-driven IT or shadow IT has become a real threat because IT department is under the entire governance and IT controls, audits, all the controls are applicable to applications which are developed by technology. What about the technology that is subscribed to, used, or brought into the ecosystem by business directly without IT's knowledge, which is a rampant thing happening today that we see. So that also adds to this overall, landscape, the threat landscape and the blind spot. The other aspect is the third party risk, which is huge, right? Sunil mentioned that recently a lot of breaches that have happened. When we were doing the investigation, we found out that while the companies had the controls and the measures to check and prevent attacks, the vendors were not at the same level, right? And you're working with n number of vendors. The revenue of those vendors are not similar to your revenue as a bank or a top insurance company. So they definitely their ability to spend on cybersecurity is also limited. And you are opening your system to them. They're like your extended arm. And today's world, we are all working with ecosystem partners.
Interesting. Now, coming to Sunil, from whatever perspectives that Deepak has shared, from the technology side, what are the white spaces that are left by organizations where they are not covered? Okay. Or what are those vulnerabilities which are still most of the times ignored by the organization, or which are those spaces where even today the kind of solutions have not been adequately put by organizations in place?
So one of the thing that I keep on mentioning, right now, now since many companies spend heavy money on acquiring tools, right, putting them in place, uh, but the effectiveness of this tool will only come when these tools talk to each other, right? Now today, I've seen most of the companies have different tools, like for attack surface, one for cloud security posture management, one for vendor, one for chain security, and so on, like vulnerability management. But these tools work in silos. If an organization has a very unique subdomain, like uuid.orgname.com, for example, and if that domain is not being referenced anywhere, it's super hard for anyone to spot that domain, right? To identify that domain, right? Because doing a DNS guessing, brute forcing will take a lot of time. Okay. And most of these tools rely on having references either through crawling, through some references through third-party website. Now, that's the gap that I see, right? But if you have a platform like the one that we develop, we have cloud security posture management, we have attack surface management, we have supply chain security, vendor, all of them at one place, right? And these modules talk to each other. So let's say if there's a CSPM, it will scan the whole cloud and try to identify the unique subdomains that are there, right? Or unique assets rather. So it's one single platform that gives 360-degree view.
And this is quite a problem because most of the organizations have multiple people from whom they are buying in products and services. Some may buy a Palo Alto, some may buy a Checkpoint, some may buy or they may have a combination of all this. Making all of them integrated together, work and give a single dashboarding is
Yeah.
something which is a problem for most of the CXOs.
Importantly, the intelligence. So the it's just bringing all data at one place is no art. The art is like how these tools talk to each other, share data, and then take action based on it, right? So let's say if there's a new domain being added to, let's say, one of the cloud services, and you're using our service, it'll detect and it'll start you know all its action on attack surface, right?
Interesting. So it is like basically having an intel inside and an idiot outside will not work. You need intel inside and an intelligent outside also.
Right.
Excellent. From the business strategy perspective, the kind of emerging tools that are coming in from a longer term perspective, how should organizations be working towards this, future proofing the security strategy in the organization?
So the first thing is to say, where do you stand? So getting a security assessment done from an architectural perspective, the security architecture assessment done is very important. Then, like I said, it is very important to understand your affordability, and basis your affordability, do the protect versus park strategy, right? And within the protect, it is important that we not only look at the traditional way of, let's say, putting up the perimeter, and then doing a VAPT practice, but also look at key areas that we need to invest upon. The first area I would basically say is to have a monitoring mechanism for your attack surface. It's a very important thing. You need, what you can monitor is what you can protect, right? So attack surface management is very important. The second area I would go into, other than the perimeter, I'm leaving the perimeter away because almost everybody knows this particular thing: antivirus, firewall, network security, and all those things.
Correct.
From a CIO CTO perspective, looking at the area, one is, like I said, ASM. Then we come into the application side of things. A VAPT is not enough. We have to go into the code base. So secure code reviews, software composition analysis to prevent risks such as version obsolescence, supply chain attack, and even license compliance issues, right? Avoidance of license compliance issues. All of that is very important to do from a protection of your applications security from a code perspective. The third area I will look at always is the ecosystem partners with whom I have done a handshake. Whichever kind of, either it is a data sharing handshake, or it is the API handshake, or it is any kind of a data exchange, via system kind of a thing, to figure out my third party risks. So that is very important that I would do. If I am on a cloud environment or a multi-cloud environment, it is very important to also invest in a CSPM kind of a tool wherein you are constantly monitoring the cloud, because we are doing multiple changes. Like everybody is moving towards microservices and CI/CD pipelines. What that means is the speed of change is high. So with that, you must keep pace with monitoring from a security standpoint. So I would invest in that as well. Of course, beyond this, I would look at certain tools, techniques, or even partnerships with players who are in the practice of cybersecurity and who are research oriented, not just the commodity cybersecurity providers who basically will deploy people and then say that, okay, these 4 people will do the checking. No, that's the basic, right? But I would invest in a partner who will basically keep giving me the threat intel, tell me what are the new things coming in, and help me go from reactive to proactive.
And Sunil, any perspective you want to add from the futuristic tools that would be coming in, or tools that would be handy in future proofing the organizations in security?
So as of now, there's a lot of buzz about these tools, but having a proper attack surface management, a solid attack surface management tool, not just like the tool that gives you a basic posture, but a tool which has intelligence, which can actually show you the real risks that you have, right? Same as Deepak rightly mentioned, like monitoring your vendors. It's a trend, right? So you often ignore vendors, just go on questionnaire based assessment, and you think that my vendor is doing good, but that should not be the case. Monitoring vendor is also important, right? Then supply chain security. It's making noise on the internet, but trust me, in coming few years, it's gonna make a noise, right? There are so many open source components being used, and today the softwares that are being developed, they heavily rely on using some third party open source components, right? And those components also have deep dependency on few more components, right? It's like a chain. So any vulnerability in them, it can affect you as well, right? And coming back to the services side, I mean, a lot of clients reach out to us saying that, hey, we need 2 people to do VAPT, right? I still feel like, people are still not understanding VAPT is okay, but there's much more thing you have to do, right? You keep on running scan, there would be people who will be doing testing, but that's not enough, right? What I recommend, going through a full cycle of test, right? So when you are doing an assessment, it has to be a code assisted pen test, right? So not everything you can identify by looking at the endpoint. right? Something probably it all depends on the skill of the pen tester, right? The guy who does security testing.
Superb. Question, since we are already having constantly shifting goalposts in security with all these new technologies coming in place, and to add to it, the regulators also have to act because the police have to finally, or the lawmakers have to create the law to make sure that these frauds are not repeated. So, constantly changing goalposts. From a business and technology strategy, what is your advice from business side, Deepak, and from tech side, Sunil, to ensure that you are constantly matching with whatever is required in the market and to stay ahead of the race?
So rightly mentioned, Babu, cybersecurity is like, walking up or down escalator. If you
Yeah,
stop walking, you'll be thrown out.
correct.
Means you have to keep abreast of new technologies, new risks that these technologies bring in, and new techniques to protect against those risks. So one is identifying those risks and then protect against those risks. So for example, AI coming in, AI also introduces new risks. And AI can be used to mitigate the risk as well, right? So organizations, while you don't have infinite pocket, again, protect versus spark, you have to keep revisiting it at a frequency which is at least annual, right? And the security budget should always go a step up year on year, along with the growth of the organization.
Interesting.
If not following the same, a better graph path, but at least the same graph path, with again protect versus spark and revisiting the security threats. So threat-based and risk-based investment strategy needs to be revisited year on year to figure out what new technology has come in and what new risks have come in to mitigate those risks.
Any tools or any suggestions, Sunil?
When you use AI, it has to be used safely, right? It has many pros and cons, especially if it is, controlled by an attacker, right? As an example, very recently we were assessing one of the companies. We were doing full attack surface and breach simulation activity there, and we found an chatbot. Eventually we realized that we can utilize that AI to give data of some other user, right? Because it was not sandbox, it had like full access. We utilized that AI chatbot to query other systems data, right? In fact, the chatbot itself gave data of the from one server. Like, we asked the chat to execute certain command, it actually executed on its own server.
Oh,
From the technology perspective, it may look wow, right? There's an AI chatbot. It uses NLP. You put any language, you write in whichever language. If you make typo mistake, it corrects everything like the other GPTs, which are very popular. But at the same time, security was not being considered, and it actually led to disaster, right? So we were able to compromise through that chatbot. We were able to get access to AWS account.
so that was a great encapsulated conversation, and I'm sure that there is a lot more to discuss when you go drill deeper into it. But this can be a very good first-hand conversation. And ultimate objective is to create a dashboard which can give you a 360-degree view of your entire organization, integrate all the tools because you buy multiple tools together. So you have to integrate that tool, have that intelligence to identify each of these vulnerabilities that are there, and then you should be intelligent enough to decipher that intelligence and make a proper use of it, and at the same time automate enough so that you don't need to be there at every place at every time to handle every automated attack, but it has to happen on its own. Thank you very much, Deepak, and thank you, Sunil.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.